Today we're presenting an accident analysis on the chicken processing plant fire in Hamlet, North Carolina, presented by Caitlin Collini, Christopher Psychalis, Sarah Schroeder, and Andy Stetz. The Imperial Foods facility specialized in preparing and cooking raw poultry for distribution to restaurants. On September 3rd, 1991, around 8:15 a.m., a fire broke out at the plant after a hydraulic fluid leak brought hydraulic fluid vapors into contact with the gas that was heating a cooking vat. What followed was a series of tragic and largely preventable, culminating in 25 preventable. What followed was a series of tragic and largely preventable events, culminating in 25 deaths and 54 injuries. The root cause of the fire was a hydraulic fluid leak from the hydraulic component that powered a conveyor belt in the plant. The hydraulic line had failed shortly before the fire, and a replacement part on hand wasn't the right size. A maintenance worker was given permission to shorten the factory-approved replacement line. This shortened line was installed, and the line was repressurized, but soon after, the replacement line disconnected, and pressurized hydraulic fluid began to leak. Hydraulic fluid vapor from the leak came into contact with the gas heating plumes being used to heat the cooking vat. A fireball immediately consumed the hydraulic line and heating plumes. Heavy black smoke quickly spread through the factory. In addition to severely limiting visibility for workers trying to make their way out of the building, the smoke was highly toxic. Just one or two breaths of the toxic smoke could debilitate the person inhaling it. Safety drills were not part of the Imperial Foods workplace culture, which made the evacuation disorganized and chaotic. The Imperial Foods plant was not equipped with pull-trigger fire alarms, and because the building's phone line was immediately rendered inoperable by the fire, the manager had to drive to the fire station for help, wasting valuable time. Worse, several exit doors were locked and prevented employees from evacuating the building. North Carolina's Occupational Safety and Health Administration had not inspected the plant in 11 years of operation, and that resulted in 25 fatalities. We analyzed the Imperial Foods fire using human factors analysis. Human factors analysis breaks down a situation into three main areas: overload, inappropriate response, and inappropriate activities. Overload can be any factors that are environmental, situational, or internal. In the case of the chicken fire, the employees had impaired visibility due to smoke, misleading exit signs, as well as distraction from the alarms. The overall situation was extremely high risk as there was no clear instructions on how to evacuate. This combined with the fire and toxic smoke, which put employees in immediate danger. In addition, the fire department personnel, which came for support, knew many of the victims and suffered from emotional stress during and after the incident. Inappropriate response might deal with detecting hazards without correcting them, removing safeguards, or ignoring safety. In this case, the fire was detected with immediately, but nothing was in place to contain or diffuse the situation. As seen in the picture above in red, doors, which should have been cleared in order to enable a safe exit during a fire, was noticeable with placards, yet the actual doors were locked to prevent exiting. The hydraulic lines did not shut off in response to the leak, and while the production manager should have immediately alerted the fire department of the fire, the phone line was already broken. So additional time was lost as the production manager drove to the fire station to alert authorities. Inappropriate activities may involve personnel performing tasks without training or misjudging the degree of risk on a task. In this case, the hydraulic lines used in the production plant were never considered when evaluating fire risks. This may have been a reason why the hydraulic line was repaired in a way that caused performance deterioration, which means the hydraulic line was no longer able to withstand the same pressure specification. This could have been prevented if the employee or the supervisor who gave him permission to shorten the line had known not to operate the conveyor belt at full capacity and caused the repaired hydraulic line to fail. The Imperial Foods fire was an eye-opening disaster, and from it, the U.S. Fire Administration suggested several improvements for future operations. They can be categorized into three main areas: safety, training, factory layout, and planning. First, in terms of safety, life safety codes must be enforced. Employers must reduce hazards and have available the proper number of exits. Adequate detection and adequate suppression equipment for fire, hardware malfunctions, and other safety hazards should be provided. On a policy level, governments need to make enough OSHA safety inspectors available to inspect as many high-risk workplaces as possible. Second, increased training should include educating staff on the proper response to an emergency. Emergency exit drills must be incorporated into industry policies. All employees must actually practice evacuation drills and follow the routes so all employees are aware of the emergency procedures. This paid off for Tyson's Food, as 115 employees made it out of the building within 3 minutes after a fire broke out, similar to the one that caused so many casualties at Imperial Foods. Aside from safety drills, staff should be taught that maintenance and operation of potentially dangerous equipment must only be performed by factory-trained personnel and must adhere to factory specifications. Employers should also establish a worry-free line of communication between employees and plant management or regulatory authorities so that problems can be reported and fixed. Third, factory layout and planning can be improved to prevent disasters such as the Imperial Foods fire. For example, cooking areas must be separate from other work areas. Cooking equipment greatly increases the risk factor for a fire, so having workers stationed away from the cooking operations will decrease the risk of a fire. High-pressure equipment in areas that are prone to potential incidents should have built-in shutdown valves that trigger before a catastrophic event occurs. In the event that an emergency does occur, evacuations will go more smoothly if building exits are indicated with lights above and below the door to prepare for the event where smoke blocks ceiling lights. Also, negative airflow systems could be modified to evacuate the smoke as well as toxic fumes, allowing for a safer evacuation by staff. In addition to the suggestions of the U.S. Fire Administration, our group came up with several suggestions for improved safety based on the Imperial Foods fire. Workplace leaders can take many steps to improve safety. The Imperial Foods plant should have had pull-trigger fire alarms. This is a critical difference between the Imperial Foods fire and a similar Tyson's chicken processing plant fire that occurred in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Adding secondary and tertiary phone systems also could have made it possible to contact the fire department sooner. In addition, the Imperial Food plant should have performed a systems approach examination of the maintenance procedures. And that concludes our presentation.